Ellie Redmond ripped the wedding ring off her finger and shoved it into her dead husband's pocket. He wasn't dead yet, but he was dead to her. Wade stood in the doorway of the cabin, saddlebag over his shoulder, and he didn't look at the baby crying in the cradle, or the 6-year-old girl pressed flat against the wall, trying not to breathe too loud. He looked at the horse outside. "Don't follow me," he said. Ellie's hand found the iron poker by the stove. "Get out before I use this." He got out. If you're watching from somewhere you've ever had to choose between staying in a place that was killing you or walking into nothing with your children, tell us where you're tuning in from. Subscribe and follow along. This story's just getting started. 3 weeks later, the baby stopped crying. That silence woke Ellie faster than any scream. She rolled off the floor where she'd been sleeping, grabbed Tommy from the pile of blankets. His lips were blue. His skin was cold. She pressed him against her bare chest, skin to skin, and breathed on his face. "Come on, come on, come on, come on." Ruth sat up in the corner. "Mama?" "Get the blanket, the wool one, now." Ruth moved fast. She always moved fast when Ellie's voice went flat like that. She knew what flat meant. Flat meant something was wrong, and crying about it wouldn't help. Ellie rubbed Tommy's chest with her palm. Small circles, fast. His body was so tiny her hand covered his whole torso. 3 weeks old, and he weighed less than the iron skillet hanging on the wall. "Tommy, you breathe. You breathe right now." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then a sound, thin, weak, like a kitten that got stepped on. But air going in. Ellie's knees gave out. She sat hard on the floor, Tommy against her chest, and she pressed her face into the top of his head. He smelled like milk and wool, and something sweet she couldn't name. The smell of alive. Ruth knelt beside her, wrapped the wool blanket around both of them. Her hands were careful, practiced. A 6-year-old shouldn't know how to wrap a blanket around a dying baby. Ruth knew. "He okay, Mama?" "He's breathing. He was real quiet." "I know." "Too quiet." "I know, Ruth." Ruth sat back, pulled her knees up. Her right foot was bare. The boot had split 2 days ago, and Ellie had cut it apart for leather to patch the cabin door where the wind came through. Now the wind came through anyway, because the patch didn't hold, and Ruth had no boot. "Mama, the fire's out." Ellie looked at the stove, cold. The last piece of wood had burned through sometime in the night. She'd rationed it down to 1 log per night, then half a log, then sticks and bark and chair legs. Last night she'd burned the shelf from the wall. Now there was nothing. "I know." "What are we going to burn?" Ellie looked around the cabin. 1 room. Wade had taken everything worth taking. The good blankets, the lamp oil, the flour, the money from the tin behind the stove. He'd even taken the axe, which meant she couldn't split wood, even if she found some. "Nothing. We're not staying." Ruth's eyes went wide. "It's snowing, Mama." "I know it's snowing." "Where are we going?" "Anywhere there's people." "How far?" Ellie didn't answer that. She didn't know. The nearest town was maybe 15 miles east, maybe 20. Wade had always driven the wagon to town. She'd never paid attention to the distance because she wasn't allowed to go. He said a wife didn't need to go to town. He said he'd get what they needed. He said a lot of things. "Ruth, put on your coat. Button it all the way." "What about my foot?" Ellie pulled off her own left glove. It was her father's, leather, too big for her hands, cracked at the knuckles. She knelt down, slid it over Ruth's bare foot, tied it at the ankle with a strip torn from her petticoat. That'll hold? It'll hold. It looks funny. Funny's fine. Frozen ain't. You ready? Ruth nodded. She didn't ask again where they were going. She'd learned that some questions didn't have answers, and asking them just made Mama's face go tight. Ellie wrapped Tommy against her chest with the wool shawl. He was breathing now, small and steady, his fists curled against her skin. She buttoned her coat over both of them. The coat barely closed. She'd lost weight since Tommy was born. Not by choice. There just wasn't food. She picked up the one bag she'd packed. 2 dresses, her father's pocket knife, her mother's sewing tin. The bag weighed almost nothing. Her whole life weighed almost nothing. Ruth, one more thing. Yes, Mama? If I fall down, you take Tommy and you keep walking east. You follow the sun in the morning. You don't stop. Ruth stared at her. Those brown eyes, too old for 6. You're not going to fall down. If I do. You won't. Ruth. I heard you, Mama. Take Tommy, walk east, don't stop. Ellie touched her daughter's face. Cold cheek, chapped lips, a bruise on her jaw from 3 weeks ago when Wade had shoved past her and she'd hit the doorframe. The bruise was green now. Healing. Everything healed if you gave it enough time and kept it away from what hurt it. They walked out into the snow. The cold hit like a wall. Ellie gasped. Tommy flinched against her chest but didn't cry. Ruth grabbed the back of Ellie's coat and held on. They walked. Talk to me, Ruth. About what? Anything. Keep talking so I know you're awake. I'm counting my steps. Good. Count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ruth counted. Her voice was thin in the wind, but steady. 37. 38. Good girl. Mama, how many steps to a mile? Don't know. Couple thousand, maybe? That's a lot. One at a time, Ruth. They walked for what felt like hours. The snow was past Ellie's knees in places. Each step was a fight. Pull the foot up, push it forward, sink again. Tommy was warm against her chest, his breathing steady now. But every few minutes, she'd press her hand against his back just to feel it rise and fall. Mama? Yeah? 212. Keep going. Mama, I see something. Ellie stopped, squinted. The snow was so thick the world was just white noise in every direction. Where? There. Big, dark thing. Ellie shifted direction. Her thighs were burning. Her back was a wall of pain. But she walked toward the dark shape because her daughter's eyes were better than hers, and Ruth never lied about what she saw. A wagon, half buried in a drift. Canvas top collapsed under the snow. One wheel twisted sideways, the axle cracked. A horse stood in the traces, head down, frost on its mane. Alive, but just barely. A man knelt beside the broken wheel. No hat. His coat was good wool, expensive, but soaked through and useless now. He was trying to lever the axle with a fence post. His hands were raw, bleeding. Ellie stopped 10 feet away. Watched him work for 3 seconds. That's all she needed. You're going to snap that post before you move that axle. The man spun around. His face was wind-burned red, eyes gray, sharp, scared. He looked at her, at Ruth clutching her coat, at the bundle against her chest. Ma'am, what? Your crack runs diagonal. You're prying against the grain. It'll split clean through. How do you got tools in that wagon or not? He stared. Under the seat. Ruth, stay here. Hold on to the wheel. Don't sit in the snow. Ruth grabbed the wheel spoke, her gloved foot and her booted foot planted wide. She looked like a tiny soldier standing guard. Ellie climbed into the wagon, found the toolbox, opened it. Hammers, wrenches, chain, good chain, heavy links. She pulled it out. "Ma'am, you don't have to—" "Hush." She dropped back down into the snow, looped the chain around the axle, one side of the crack, then the other. Pulled it tight. The metal burned her fingers through her one remaining glove. She pulled the glove off with her teeth, worked barehanded. The cold was so sharp it felt like fire. "Hold the post sideways. Brace it here," she pointed, "against the hub." He did it, didn't argue. His hands were shaking worse than hers. She needed a pin, something to lock the chain link. She reached into her bag, pulled out her father's pocket knife, opened it. The blade was 4 inches, good steel, folded back against the handle. She slid the handle through the chain link, locked it crosswise. "That's your knife." "I know what it is." "You're jamming it in. It's iron. Iron holds. My father made this knife, and he made it to last." She yanked the chain tight. The knife handle held. The links locked. "Test it. Roll forward. Slow." He climbed up, clicked the reins. The horse pulled. The wagon lurched. The wheel turned. Grinding, groaning, but it turned. 3 feet. 5. 10. The chain held. The knife held. He stopped, looked back at her. She was standing in the snow, barehanded, Tommy against her chest, her face red and her lips cracked, and her eyes daring him to say something about a woman fixing a man's wagon in a blizzard. He didn't say anything about that. He said, "You need to get that baby warm." "I know what my baby needs." "Ma'am, I got a ranch 12 miles north. There's a fire. There's food. I got a man who's delivered more calves than the county vet." "My son ain't a calf." "No, ma'am, but Dutch has got steady hands and good sense. That count for anything out here?" Ellie looked at Ruth. Ruth was watching from the wheel, one hand on the spoke, her glove boot already soaked through with snow. Her lips were going white. "Ruth, come here." Ruth walked over, slow. She stopped in front of the man, looked up at him. He was tall, even kneeling. His bleeding hands hung at his sides. "Are you mean?" The words hit the air like a crack of thunder. The man's whole body changed. His jaw went tight. His eyes dropped to Ruth's face, to the fading bruise on her jaw, to the glove tied around her bare foot. Ellie watched him see it, watched him understand. "No, sweetheart." His voice came out rough. "I ain't mean." "My papa was mean." "Ruth," Ellie started. "He hit Mama. He hit her a lot. Then he left." The silence after that was the loudest thing on the prairie. The wind blew. The snow fell. The horse shifted in the traces. The man swallowed hard. He didn't look at Ellie. He kept his eyes on Ruth. He spoke to her like she was a grown woman, not a child. "I'm sorry that happened to you and your mama." "Are you sorry, or are you just saying that?" "Ruth." Ellie's voice was sharp. "I want to know, Mama. Papa used to say sorry all the time. Then he'd do it again." The man nodded slow. "That's fair. You don't know me. I don't know you. Only thing I can do is show you. Words don't mean much in a blizzard." Ruth thought about this. She looked at his bleeding hands. "You hurt yourself fixing your own wagon." "Yes." "Papa never fixed nothing himself. He made Mama do it." Ellie closed her eyes, opened them. Ruth was still talking. Ruth, who hadn't spoken more than 10 words a day for the past month, was talking to this stranger like she'd been saving up every word for this moment. Can we go with him, Mama? We're going with him. Is it warm there? He says there's a fire. I want a fire. I know, baby. Ruth walked to the wagon and climbed up. She sat in the middle of the seat, pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. Waiting. Ellie climbed up beside her. Tommy shifted against her chest. She adjusted the shawl. His face was pink now, not blue. Pink was good. Pink meant blood moving. Pink meant alive. The man climbed up on the other side, took the reins. His bleeding hands left red marks on the leather. Name's Caleb Donnelly. Ellie Redmond. Ruth, you met. Baby's Thomas. We call him Tommy. He clicked his tongue. The horse leaned forward. The wagon moved. The chain held. Ruth pressed against Ellie's side. Her body was trembling. Not from cold anymore. From something else. From the relief of sitting down. From the relief of not walking. From the relief of a stranger who bled from his own hands instead of making someone else bleed from theirs. Mama? Yeah, baby. How many steps did I count? I don't know. How many? 419. That's a lot of steps. I can do more. I know you can. But I don't want to right now. You don't have to. Ruth put her head against Ellie's arm, closed her eyes. In 30 seconds, she was asleep. Just like that. The way children sleep when they finally feel safe enough to stop watching. Tommy stirred. Ellie needed to feed him. She looked at Caleb. He was watching the road ahead. She unbuttoned her coat, shifted Tommy, let him latch. Caleb kept his eyes forward. Didn't look, didn't comment, didn't make it into something it wasn't. Thank you, Ellie said. She didn't mean for the ride. Don't thank me yet. You ain't seen the house. Got walls? Last I checked. Got a roof? Mostly. Then it's better than where I been. They rode. The snow fell. Ruth slept. Tommy nursed. The wagon creaked and the chain groaned, and the horse's breath came out in white clouds that disappeared behind them. How far now? Maybe 6 miles. Your people know you're coming? They'll see the wagon. Dutch'll have coffee on. He always does. This Dutch, he good with children? Caleb was quiet for a moment. He gave his whole supper to a stray dog once. Slept hungry so the dog wouldn't. That ain't the same as children. No, ma'am. But the principle's the same. He don't let small things suffer if he can help it. Ellie looked at Tommy. Small thing. 3 weeks old. Born in a storm. Living through another one. He'd stopped nursing and was asleep now. Milk on his lips. His fists uncurled for the first time all day. Mama? Ruth's voice muffled against her arm. Not asleep after all. Yeah, baby. That man's hoarse. He's real tired. I know. We should let him rest when we get there. Caleb made a sound. Not quite a laugh. Something softer. She's right. I'll make sure he gets extra oats. Ruth opened one eye, looked at Caleb, closed it again. That was enough. She'd checked. He'd passed. The miles went by. The snow didn't stop, but the wind died down some. The world got quieter. Just the creak of the wagon and the horse's hooves crunching, and Tommy's breathing, and Ruth's breathing, and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears like it had been pounding for 3 weeks straight, without stopping. Then Ruth sat up. Smoke! Ellie looked. A thin gray line against the gray sky, just barely there. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. That's home, Caleb said.
Then he caught himself.
The ranch, Stone Ridge. Smoke means fire, Ruth said. Ellie pulled her daughter close. kissed the top of her head. Ruth's hair smelled like snow and sweat and the cabin they'd left behind. Soon it would smell like smoke and coffee and something cooking on a stove. "Yeah, baby, smoke means fire." "And fire means Tommy's okay?" Ellie pressed her hand against Tommy's back. Rise, fall, rise, fall. Steady. Alive. Fire means we're all okay. The wagon rolled toward the smoke. The chain held, the wheel turned, and Ellie Redmond, who'd spent 3 years learning that hope was just a trap that hurt worse when it broke, let herself look at that thin line of smoke against the sky and think, maybe, just maybe, some things held together instead of falling apart. She didn't say it out loud, didn't dare. But Ruth must have felt it, because she squeezed Ellie's hand once, hard, the way a 6-year-old squeezes when she wants to say something she doesn't have words for yet. Ellie squeezed back. The smoke got closer. The wagon rolled into the yard, and the first thing Ellie saw was the old man standing on the porch with a shotgun. He wasn't pointing it at them, just holding it loose at his side. But his eyes were locked on the wagon, and he didn't blink. "That's Dutch," Caleb said. "He does that." "Does what? Points guns at people?" "Watches. He's been watching since we came over the ridge. He knows it's me. Gun ain't for us." Dutch was maybe 60, thick through the shoulders, thin everywhere else. White hair cut short, a face like leather that had been left in the rain too many times. He set the shotgun against the porch rail when Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop. 3 other men came out of the barn, all of them old, all of them watching. "Boss," Dutch's voice was deep, scratched like gravel in a tin cup. "You're late by 2 days." "Axle cracked on the South Road." Dutch looked at the chain wrapped around the axle, at the knife handle jammed through the link. His eyebrows went up. "That ain't your work." "No, it ain't." Dutch's eyes moved to Ellie, to Ruth pressed against her side, to the bundle at her chest. He looked for exactly 3 seconds. Then he looked at Caleb. "Coffee's on, soup, too. I made extra on account of the storm." He said it like he'd been expecting them, like 3 strangers showing up in a blizzard was just another Tuesday. "Ruth?" Ellie's voice was steady. "We're getting down now." "I don't want to." "I know. We're getting down anyway." Ellie climbed off the wagon. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on the wheel, one hand, knuckles white. Dutch moved forward. She held up her other hand. "I'm fine." "Ma'am, you ain't fine. You're about to fall over." "I said I'm fine." Dutch stopped, looked at her hand held up like a wall between them. He nodded once, stepped back, gave her the space she needed to be not fine, on her own terms. Ruth climbed down next. She stood behind Ellie's leg, one hand gripping the fabric of her coat. Her eyes moved from Dutch to the 3 men by the barn and back, counting them, measuring them, figuring out which way to run if she had to. "Gentlemen," Caleb jumped down. "This is Ellie Redmond, her daughter, Ruth. Baby's name is Thomas. They'll be staying." He didn't say for how long, didn't say why, just stated it like fact. The tallest of the 3 men by the barn stepped forward. Black skin, gray at the temples, hands the size of dinner plates. He tipped his hat. "Ma'am, I'm Mose." The one beside him, shorter, rounder, ruddy-faced, lifted his hat too. "Cork, ma'am. Welcome to Stone Ridge." The third man just nodded. Thin, quiet, a scar running from his ear to his collar. "Abel." Ruth stared at them. 4 men, all strangers. Her grip on Ellie's coat tightened until her fingers went white. "Ruth." Ellie knelt down, eye level. "These men work here. They're not going to bother you." "How do you know?" Because I'll kill anyone who does. She said it plain, not whispered, not soft, loud enough that every man in that yard heard it. Dutch's expression didn't change. Mose looked at the ground. Cork cleared his throat. Abel just nodded again, slower this time, like he understood exactly what kind of woman was standing in front of him, and exactly what had made her that way. Caleb broke the silence. Dutch, the baby needs looking at. Born early. 3 weeks ago. Dutch came down the steps, slow. He stopped 6 feet from Ellie. Didn't reach for Tommy. Didn't step closer. May I see him, ma'am? Ellie's arms tightened around the bundle. Every muscle in her body said no. Every instinct she'd built over 3 years of protecting her children from a man who was supposed to love them said, don't let him near them. But Tommy had stopped breathing this morning, and she didn't know if he'd stop again tonight. She pulled back the shawl. Tommy's face was pink, small, eyes closed. His lips moved in his sleep, sucking at nothing. Dutch leaned in, didn't touch, just looked. How much he weigh when he came? I don't know. There wasn't a scale. He eatin' good? When he eats, sometimes he won't latch. How often he sleep like that, deep, hard to wake? Too often. Dutch straightened up. His face was careful, the kind of careful that means someone is choosing their words before they say them. He needs warmth, steady warmth, not blanket warmth, body warmth, skin to skin, as much as you can. And he needs to eat every 2 hours, even if you gotta wake him. Babies born early, they forget to eat. They forget to breathe sometimes, too. You gotta remind him. I know about the breathing. Dutch looked at her. She looked back. Something passed between them. An understanding. He'd seen this before. Maybe not with a human baby, but with something small and born too soon and fighting to stay alive. I'll heat some stones, wrap 'em in cloth, keep 'em in the bed around him. Steady heat all night. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Let's get him through the first night. Ellie followed Dutch inside. Ruth followed Ellie. The front door opened into a big room. Table in the center, chairs around it, stove against the wall throwing heat. The warmth hit Ellie's face like a hand. She stopped, stood there, let it soak in. Ruth walked straight to the stove, put both hands out. The glove on her foot was dripping. She didn't take it off. Just stood there with her palms toward the heat and her eyes closed. Ruth, honey, sit down. I want to stand. Your foot. I want to stand, Mama, near the fire. Please. Ellie let her stand. Some fights weren't worth having. Dutch brought a bowl of soup, set it on the table. Brought another one, bread beside it, thick cut, dark. A cup of coffee, black, steaming. He set everything down without asking if she wanted it. She sat, ate. The soup was beef and potato and something she couldn't name. It burned her tongue. She didn't care. She ate until the bowl was empty. Then she sopped the bread and the last of the broth and ate that too. Ruth hadn't moved from the stove. Ellie brought her a bowl. Ruth took it with both hands, sat on the floor right there, cross-legged, and ate with a spoon gripped in her fist like she was afraid someone would take it away. Nobody's taking your food, Ruth. I know. Then slow down. I don't want to slow down. I want more. Dutch appeared with a second bowl. Set it beside Ruth on the floor. Didn't say a word. Didn't pat her head. Didn't smile at her. Just put the food down and walked away. Ruth watched him go. Then she picked up the second bowl and ate it just as fast as the first. Caleb came in through the back door, stomping snow off his boots. He'd put the horse away, Ellie figured, fed it, Check the chain on the axle. A man who takes care of his animals before himself. Her father had been like that. Wade had not. Dutch, where are we putting them? Back room's ready. I put clean sheets on this morning. Caleb looked at Ellie. Room off the kitchen. It's small, but it's warm. Closest to the stove. You planned that. Dutch planned it. He plans everything. I plan nothing, Dutch said from the kitchen. I just always keep a room ready. Never know when someone's going to need it. Ellie stood. Tommy was stirring against her chest. She needed to feed him again. Dutch's voice came from the doorway. Man, there's warm water in the pitcher, clean towels on the bed, and I put a cradle in there. It's rough made, built it for a calf once, but it rocks. You built a cradle for a calf? Orphan calf. Mama died birthing her. Had to keep her warm somehow. Dutch paused. She lived, if you're wondering. Grew up to be the orneriest cow on this ranch. Still out there somewhere, making trouble. Ruth looked up from her empty bowl. What's her name? Dutch looked down at the girl sitting on his kitchen floor with a glove on her foot and soup on her chin. Something shifted in his face. Not soft exactly, just less hard. Biscuit. That's a dumb name for a cow. She's a dumb cow. Ruth almost smiled. Almost. The corners of her mouth moved a fraction of an inch and then stopped. Like she'd forgotten how, or like she remembered that smiling used to get her in trouble. Ellie saw it. That tiny, almost smile. It cracked something inside her chest that she'd been holding together with willpower and rage for 3 years. Come on, Ruth. Bedtime. I'm not tired. You fell asleep in a moving wagon in a blizzard. You're tired. That was different. Ruth? Yes, Mama? They went to the back room. Small, like Caleb said. A bed against the wall, iron frame, thick mattress. A cradle beside it, rough pine, hand-planed, big enough for a newborn. A washstand with a pitcher, 2 towels, clean and white. A window facing east, dark now, frost on the glass. Ellie set Tommy in the cradle. He fussed. She rocked it with her foot. The rockers were smooth, worn from use. The calf. She was rocking her baby in a cradle built for a calf named Biscuit. And somehow, that was the most normal thing that had happened to her in months. Mama, there's only one bed. We'll share. Where does Tommy sleep? In the cradle. What if he stops breathing again? Ellie's hands stopped moving. She looked at Ruth. Her daughter was standing by the door, arms at her sides, her face set in that expression she wore when she was trying very hard not to be scared. I'll hear him. What if you don't? Then you'll hear him. You always hear him. I don't want to hear him stop, Mama. Ellie crossed the room, knelt in front of Ruth, took both her hands. They were cold, chapped, the nails bitten down to nothing. Ruth, look at me. Ruth looked. Tommy's gonna be fine. We're warm now. We got food. We got a roof that don't leak and a stove that's hot. And a man out there who knows about keeping small things alive. The calf man. The calf man, yeah. What about the other one? The tall one with the bleeding hands? Caleb. Is he gonna let us stay? He said we're staying. Papa said lots of things too. The words landed like stones dropped in still water, rings spreading out. Ellie held her daughter's hands tighter. I know, baby, but here's the difference. Papa said things to make us stay quiet. This man ain't asked us to be quiet about nothing. Ruth thought about this. He didn't tell me to hush when I asked if he was mean. No, he didn't. Papa would've. Yeah, he would've. Ruth pulled one hand free, touched Ellie's face. Her small fingers traced the line of Ellie's jaw, the cheekbone, the spot below her left eye where a scar sat, thin and white, from the night wade through the lamp. You're not scared, Mama? I'm always scared, Ruth. Being scared don't mean you stop moving. What does it mean? It means you move careful. Ruth nodded. She understood this. 6 years old, and she understood this better than most grown women Ellie had ever met. Because Ruth had lived it, had watched her mother live it, had pressed herself flat against a wall, trying not to breathe too loud, so her father wouldn't notice her. Mama? Yeah? My foot's prickly again. That's good. Let me see. Ellie untied the glove from Ruth's foot. The skin was red, not white, not black, red. Angry, but alive. She pressed each toe. Ruth flinched. Feel that? Ow, yes. Good. All 10? All 10, Mama. Then we're fine. She washed Ruth's foot with the warm water from the pitcher, dried it, wrapped it in one of the clean towels. Ruth climbed into the bed, pulled the blanket up, and lay staring at the ceiling. Mama? What, Ruth? 419. What? My steps, in the snow. I counted 419. That's a lot of steps for a little girl. I'm not little. No, you ain't. Ruth closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. In 2 minutes, she was asleep, one hand hanging off the edge of the bed, the other curled against her chest. Ellie sat on the floor beside the cradle, rocked it with one hand. Tommy was sleeping deep, his mouth slightly open, his fists uncurled. She pressed her hand against his chest. Rise, fall. Rise, fall. A knock on the door. Soft. Yeah? The door opened. Dutch stood there with 2 flannel-wrapped bundles in his hands. Warm stones. She could feel the heat from where she sat, one on each side of him, not touching. Close enough he feels it. She took them, placed them in the cradle, one on each side of Tommy's body. The warmth radiated through the flannel. Tommy sighed in his sleep. His body relaxed in a way she hadn't seen since he was born. Like he'd been clenching every muscle for 3 weeks and finally let go. Dutch. Ma'am? Thank you. You said that already. I meant it more this time. Dutch looked at her for a long moment. Then at Ruth sleeping in the bed. Then at Tommy in the calf cradle with the warm stones. Ma'am, I don't know what happened to you out there, and I ain't gonna ask. But I raised 4 daughters before I came to work for Caleb. All of 'em grown now, all of 'em married, all of 'em tougher than any man I ever met. He paused. You remind me of the toughest one. He pulled the door shut. His footsteps faded down the hall. Ellie sat there on the floor. The warm stones glowed with heat beside her son. Her daughter slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. The stove thumped softly through the wall, a heartbeat in the bones of the house. She pulled off her boots. Her feet were raw, blistered where the too big leather had rubbed. She peeled off her stockings. The skin underneath was white, pruned from sweat and snowmelt. She wiggled her toes. They all moved. She thought about the cabin she'd left, the empty wood box, the door Wade had walked through without looking back, the 3 weeks of burning furniture and chair legs and shelves to keep her children alive. The morning Tommy stopped breathing, and she'd held him against her bare chest and screamed at him to come back. She thought about 419 steps in the snow. She thought about a man whose hands bled from fixing his own wagon. She thought about a calf named Biscuit, and an old man with 4 daughters and warm stones wrapped in flannel. She lay down on the floor beside the cradle, not in the bed, not yet. She needed to be close enough to feel Tommy breathe, close enough to hear if the rhythm changed. She pulled her coat over herself like a blanket. The floor was wood, hard, cold at the edges, but warm near the wall where the stove heat came through. Her father's pocket knife was still jammed in that chain on the axle outside. She'd need to get it back tomorrow. That knife was the last thing he'd made before the fever took him. 4-inch blade, bone handle, iron rivets. He'd given it to her on her 16th birthday. Said every woman should know how to cut herself free. She hadn't understood then. She understood now. Her eyes closed. Tommy breathed beside her. Ruth breathed above her. The house creaked with wind and settling wood. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard groaned. Caleb, moving in his room. Then quiet. For the first time in 3 weeks, Ellie Redmond slept without one eye open. Not because she trusted this place, not because she felt safe, but because her body had finally run out of the energy it took to stay afraid, and sleep came, whether she wanted it or not, deep and heavy and black as the prairie sky outside the frosted window, where the snow kept falling and the smoke kept rising, and the warm stones kept Tommy alive through the longest night of his short, stubborn, impossible life. Tommy lived through the night, and the next one, and the one after that. By the 4th morning, Ellie stopped pressing her hand against his chest every 10 minutes. By the 7th, she stopped sleeping on the floor and moved to the bed beside Ruth. By the 10th, she stopped counting his breaths. He was gaining weight. She could feel it when she lifted him, the heaviness of him, the way his body filled out the shawl instead of swimming in it. Dutch's warm stones had become a nightly ritual. Every evening he'd bring 2 new ones, wrapped in flannel, still radiating heat from the stove. He'd knock once, leave them by the door, never came in without asking. "Dutch." "Ma'am?" "You can stop knocking. I know it's you." Knocking ain't about you knowing who it is. It's about you having the choice to say no. She didn't say anything to that. Couldn't. Because Wade had never knocked on anything in his life. He'd walk through doors like he owned everything on the other side, including her. Ruth had started following Dutch around the ranch. Not close, 20 feet behind, like a barn cat that wanted to be near people but didn't want to be touched. Dutch never turned around, never told her to go inside, just went about his work and let her trail him like a shadow. "Your girl's been watching me mend harness for an hour," Dutch told Ellie one morning over coffee. "She bother you?" "She don't say a word, just watches." That's how she learns. She watched her father shoe horses for a year before she ever touched a hoof pick. "She touched my harness tools, I'll teach her proper." "You'd do that?" "Ain't nothing wrong with a girl knowing how to mend leather. Might save her life someday. Saved yours already from what I hear about that axle chain." Ellie looked at him over her coffee cup. "Caleb told you. Caleb don't have to tell me nothing. I looked at that chain wrap. That's skilled work. You used a knife handle as a pin. That ain't luck. That's knowing. My father taught me." "Your father taught you right." That afternoon, Ruth sat beside Dutch on the barn floor while he punched holes in a leather strap. He handed her the awl. She held it wrong. He showed her once. She held it right. He didn't praise her, just nodded and handed her the strap. She punched 3 holes, straight, even, each one exactly the same distance apart. Dutch looked at those holes for a long time. Then he looked at Ruth. "You got your mama's hands." Ruth looked at her own hands. Small, chapped, the nails bitten down. "Mama says I got my grandpa's hands." "Same thing, I reckon." 3 weeks in, Ellie found the ledgers. She'd been cleaning Caleb's office. Small room off the main hall. Desk, chair, shelves with books and papers stacked in no particular order. She wasn't snooping. The ledger fell when her rag caught the spine. It hit the floor, open. Numbers, columns, dates. She picked it up, read the first column out of habit. Her father had taught her numbers the same way he'd taught her iron. You check it. You check it again. If it don't add up, something's wrong. It didn't add up. She checked the second column. Wrong. Third. Wrong. She carried the ledger to the kitchen table, went back for 2 more, spread them out, started adding. Caleb came in at supper, stopped in the doorway. Ellie was bent over the ledgers, pen in her hand, ink on her fingers. Ruth was asleep on the floor by the stove, with Tommy in the calf cradle beside her, both of them warm and breathing and quiet. "What are you doing?" "Your books are wrong." He pulled out a chair, sat down. "How wrong?" "Wrong enough to matter. Your hay supplier's been overcharging you since March. 10% each month. That's near $300 this year." "300? Maybe more. I'm still checking." She turned a ledger around, pointed. "This column says you paid $42 for fence wire in April, but the receipt says $36. The difference went somewhere." "Where?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Caleb leaned back, looked at the ledgers, then at her. "Last bookkeeper was a man named Fenton. Came highly recommended." "By who?" "The hay supplier." Ellie let that sit. Caleb's jaw tightened. He stood, walked to the window, stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking at nothing. "How long would it take you to fix it?" "Fix it or find everything he stole?" "Both." "A week. Maybe less if you keep the coffee coming." He almost smiled. She saw it. The corner of his mouth moved. Then it stopped. "I'll keep the coffee coming." She worked 4 nights. After Ruth and Tommy were asleep, she'd sit at the table with the lamp turned high and the pen scratching and the ink turning her fingers black. Same color her father's fingers used to be. Grease and ink and iron. All the same shade of honest work. Caleb brought her coffee without asking, set it by her elbow, watched her work for a minute, then left. Every night the same. The coffee, the watching, the leaving. He never stayed long enough to make her uncomfortable. Never stood too close. Never touched her hand when he set the cup down. She noticed. She noticed everything. 3 years of living with a man who could go from smiling to swinging in half a second had made her a student of every gesture, every breath, every shift in weight. She knew where Caleb was in the house by sound, knew his footsteps on the stairs, knew the creak of his chair in the office, knew the difference between his walking to the barn walk and his coming back from the barn walk. He never moved fast in the house. She'd noticed that, too. Like he knew that sudden movement meant something different to her than it meant to most people. On the 5th morning, she showed him the final numbers. Fenton stole $412 over 14 months. Caleb stared at the ledger. Her handwriting was small, tight, precise. Every number checked. Every column balanced. She'd reorganized everything. Income separate from expenses. Feed costs separate from wages. Monthly subtotals. Quarterly summaries. "You did all this in 4 nights?" "5. I started before you knew about it." He looked at her, that direct look, the one that saw through everything. "I'll ride to town. Talk to the sheriff about Fenton." "Won't get your money back." "No, but it'll stop him doing it to someone else." Ellie closed the ledger. Her fingers left ink marks on the cover. She rubbed them on her apron. The marks stayed. They always stayed. "I reorganized your system. New columns, new categories. It's clean now. I can see that. He paused. Thank you, Ellie. It was the first time he'd used her name without ma'am in front of it or Redmond behind it. Just Ellie. She felt the word land somewhere in her chest and settle there, warm, like one of Dutch's stones. Don't thank me. Pay me. He blinked. What? I fixed your books. That's work. That's worth something. I know you weren't. I'm telling you. I cook your meals, I clean your house. I fixed your wagon, and I fixed your books. And I'll keep fixing whatever needs fixing, because that's what I do. But I ain't Charity, Caleb. I ain't a woman you rescued from the snow, and now you feel obliged to keep. I work. Work gets paid. The kitchen was quiet. Ruth was outside with Dutch. Tommy was sleeping. Just the two of them, and the stove ticking, and the morning light coming through the window. What do you want? $20 a month, same as a hired hand. My hired hands get 25. Then 25. Done. And separate quarters. This room, mine. Nobody comes in without knocking. That's already, I want it said, out loud, so there's no confusion. Your room is yours. Nobody enters without your permission, including me. And Ruth goes to school when the road's clear. Nearest school's in town. Then we figure out how to get her there. Caleb nodded, slow, thinking. Cork drives the supply wagon to town every 2 weeks. Ruth could ride along. Stay with the school teacher's family during the week. Come back weekends. I'll think on it. You do that. They looked at each other across the table. Two people who'd been broken in different ways, standing on either side of a ledger full of numbers that finally added up right. Ellie. What? $25 a month ain't enough for what you're worth. I know, but it's a start. 6 weeks in, February now. The snow hadn't stopped, but it had slowed. The drifts were 5 feet against the barn wall. The cattle were losing weight. Caleb rode out every morning to check on them, came back every evening with his face raw from wind. Ellie had a routine now. Up before dawn, fire, coffee, breakfast for Caleb and the men. Ruth helped. She cracked eggs now, careful, one-handed, the way Dutch had taught her. She buttered bread. She set the table with the plates in the right spots because she'd memorized where every man sat, and she liked things to be right. Tommy was 6 weeks old, getting fat, getting loud. He cried now, real crying, not that kitten sound from before. Strong lungs. Dutch said it was a good sign. A quiet baby worries me. A loud one, that's just a baby doing its job. The buggy came on a Tuesday. Ellie heard it before she saw it. Bells on the harness. Fancy ones. She was hanging wash on the line inside the barn. Frozen shirts and trousers that would dry stiff in the cold air. Ruth was beside her, handing up clothespins one at a time. Mama, somebody's coming. Ellie walked to the barn door. A buggy was pulling into the yard. Black lacquer body, red wheels, brass fittings polished to a shine. The horse was a high stepper, glossy, prancing in the snow like it was too good for the ground. The woman who climbed down was maybe 50, dressed like she was going to church on Easter Sunday. Dark green coat with fur trim, hat with feathers, gloves that matched. She looked at the ranch yard the way a person looks at a stain on a tablecloth. Ruth, take Tommy inside. Stay in our room. Why? Because I said so. Ruth took the baby, went inside. She didn't argue when Ellie used that voice. That voice meant something was coming, and children shouldn't be near it. Ellie wiped her hands on her apron. She was wearing the gray dress. Her hair was pulled back. Her boots were muddy from the yard. She looked like exactly what she was. A working woman on a working ranch. The woman smiled. You must be the one everyone's talking about. Ma'am? I'm Harriet Crenshaw. My husband owns the bank in town. I'm an old friend of Caleb's late wife. She looked Ellie up and down. The muddy boots, the work-reddened hands, the apron with stains from breakfast grease. My, you've certainly settled in. Can I help you with something, Mrs. Crenshaw? I thought I'd come see for myself. The whole town's been buzzing. A woman and 2 children living out here with Caleb Donnelly. No husband, no chaperone. She smiled wider. You can imagine what people are saying. I don't have to imagine. I don't much care, either. Oh, but you should, dear. Reputation is everything for a woman in your position. My position. Alone, dependent, vulnerable. Each word placed careful, like pins in fabric. A woman without a husband needs the good opinion of her community. Without it, well... She let the silence fill in the rest. Ellie's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her apron. I work here, Mrs. Crenshaw. I cook. I clean. I keep the books. I earn my wages. Wages? Harriet's eyebrows rose. How modern. And the children? They just live here? With a single man? With their mother, who works here. Of course, of course. That smile again. It's just that Caroline, God rest her, Caroline would have been heartbroken to see her home turned into a... Well, I'm sure you understand. A what, Mrs. Crenshaw? I'm only saying this because I care, dear. About Caleb, about his reputation, about what's proper. She glanced at the house. Is he home? I'd love to speak with him. He's checking cattle in the north pasture. Then I'll wait. Ma'am, with respect, I think you should go. Harriet's smile froze. Excuse me? You came out here in a blizzard, in a fancy buggy, to tell me I'm ruining a dead woman's house. You dressed up for it. You practiced that speech about reputation. And now you want to wait around so you can say the same thing to Caleb? Ellie stepped forward. One step. Her muddy boots left a print in the snow. I got 2 children in that house. One of them almost died in a snowstorm 3 weeks ago. The other one flinches when a man raises his voice because her father used his fists instead of his words. I walked 15 miles in a blizzard to keep them alive. You drove here in a heated buggy to tell me I should worry about what people think. Harriet's smile was gone. Her face was white, not from cold. Mrs. Crenshaw, I don't know what your life is like. Maybe it's nice. Maybe you got a warm house and a husband who don't hit you, and enough money that your biggest worry is what people are saying about a stranger on a ranch 20 miles from town. Good for you. I mean that. Ellie's voice was steady now. The shaking had stopped. It always stopped when she got past the fear and into the truth. But you don't know nothing about me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what my daughter's been through. And you sure as hell don't get to come to the place where my children are finally safe and warm and sleeping through the night and tell me it ain't proper. The yard was silent. The wind had died. Even the horse had stopped prancing. I think you should go now, Ellie said. And I think if you care about Caleb like you say you do, you'll leave him out of whatever story you're writing in your head about me. Harriet stood there for a long moment. Her gloved hands gripped her reticule so tight the leather creaked. Then she turned, climbed into the buggy, took the reins, and drove away without a word. Ellie watched until the buggy disappeared. Then her knees buckled. She sat down right there in the snow. Her hands were shaking again. Both of them, hard. That was something. She looked up. Mose was standing by the barn door, arms crossed. His face was unreadable. How much did you hear? Enough. He walked over, stood beside her, didn't offer a hand, didn't tell her to get up, just stood there. That woman's been coming around here since Caroline died, trying to get Caleb to marry her niece. You just ended that." "I didn't mean to end anything. I just wanted her to leave." "Sometimes that's the same thing." Mose was quiet for a moment. "Ma'am, can I tell you something?" "Go ahead." "I was born a slave in Virginia, got free in '63. Walked from Richmond to Kansas with nothing but the shirt on my back. Every town I stopped in, somebody told me I didn't belong. Told me I was wrong for being there. Told me I should go back where I came from." He looked at her. His eyes were dark, deep, full of years. "Ain't nobody born belonging somewhere, Mrs. Redmond. You build that yourself, brick by brick, day by day. And when somebody comes along and tells you that you don't belong, that's how you know you do. Because people only try to push you out of places you're already standing strong in." He tipped his hat, walked back to the barn, left her sitting in the snow with her hands shaking and her heart hammering, and his words settling into her bones like warmth from Dutch's stones. She sat there for a long time. The snow soaked through her dress. She didn't care. She was thinking about bricks, about building, about what it meant to stand strong in a place and dare someone to push you out. The front door opened. Ruth stood there, Tommy in her arms, held careful against her chest the way Ellie had taught her. Support the head. Always support the head. "Mama, the fancy lady left." "Yeah, baby." "Was she mean?" Ellie looked at her daughter, 6 years old, standing in the doorway of a house that wasn't theirs, holding a baby that almost died, asking the only question that mattered. "She was scared, Ruth." "Scared of what?" "Of us, I think." "That's dumb. We ain't scary." Ellie stood up, brushed the snow off her dress, walked to the porch, up the steps, took Tommy from Ruth's arms. He was warm, heavy. His eyes were open, dark and serious, watching her face the way newborns do when they're learning what safe looks like. "No, baby, we ain't scary. But a woman who won't quit, that scares some people more than anything." She went inside, closed the door, put another log on the fire, started supper. The routine, the rhythm, the life she was building one day at a time, one meal at a time, one brick at a time. And when Caleb came home that evening, stomping snow off his boots, his face raw from wind, and asked how her day was, she said, "Fine. Had a visitor." Handled it. He looked at her. She looked at him. Something passed between them. Not words. Something bigger. "Dutch made pie," she said. "Apple. Sit down before it gets cold." He sat. She served. Ruth set the table. Tommy slept in the cradle by the stove. The men came in from the barn, one by one. Dutch. Mose. Cork. Abel. They sat. They ate. They talked about cattle and fence lines and the price of hay. And nobody talked about the fancy buggy that had come and gone. Nobody mentioned the woman in the green coat. Nobody asked Ellie what had happened in the yard. They didn't have to. Mose had told them. And every man at that table had chosen his side without saying a word. 2 months. That's how long the quiet lasted. Ellie should have known. Quiet never lasted. Quiet was just the space between one storm and the next. And if you'd lived through enough of them, you learned to feel the pressure drop before the wind hit. It was a Thursday morning. She was kneading bread. Tommy was in the cradle by the stove, awake now, his eyes following her hands as they pushed and folded the dough. He did that, watched her work. 8 weeks old, and he already knew what her hands looked like when they were busy. Ruth was at the table doing sums. Ellie had started teaching her numbers the week before, using dried beans as counters. Ruth was fast, scary fast. She'd add columns in her head before Ellie finished writing them down. "Mama, 14 plus 9 is 23. You sure?" "I'm sure. I counted twice." "Good girl. Do the next one." The front door opened. Ellie didn't look up. Caleb always came in around this time for his second cup of coffee. His boots on the floor, his weight on the chair, the scrape of the cup across the table. She knew the sounds of him the way she knew the sounds of the house. But the boots were wrong. Too heavy, too fast. And there was a smell, whiskey and horse sweat and something sour underneath. She looked up. Wade Redmond stood in the kitchen doorway. Everything stopped. The bread dough under her hands, the air in her lungs, the clock on the wall, Ruth's pencil on the paper. Everything just stopped. He looked worse than when he'd left. Thinner. His jaw was dark with weeks of beard. His coat was filthy, torn at the shoulder. His eyes were red-rimmed, bloodshot. But they were the same eyes. The same eyes that had looked at her with love once, and then looked at her with something else. Something that made her sleep with a knife under her pillow for 2 years. "There you are," he said, like she'd been hiding, like she'd done something wrong by not being where he'd left her. Ruth made a sound, not a word. A sound. The sound a rabbit makes when the shadow of a hawk passes over it. She was out of her chair and behind Ellie in half a second, pressed against her mother's back, both hands gripping Ellie's dress. Tommy started crying. He'd never heard Wade's voice before, but babies know. They feel it in the air, the way the room changes when danger walks in. "Wade?" Ellie's voice came out flat, dead flat, the flattest it had ever been. "You look good, Ellie. Real good. Better than you ever looked with me." He smiled, the smile that used to make her stomach drop. "Nice place. Warm. You done well for yourself." "Get out." "Now that ain't friendly. I come all this way to find my wife and children, and that's what I get?" "I ain't your wife." "Ring says different. Law says different." "You left us. In the dead of winter. No food, no wood, no money. Your son was 3 weeks from being born, and you rode out on the only horse, and you didn't look back." "I had business." "You had gambling debts." Wade's eyes changed. That shift. She knew it. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Ruth pressed harder against her back. Her small fingers were digging into Ellie's ribs. "Careful, Ellie." "Or what? You'll hit me? You'll hit me in front of your daughter again?" She remembers, Wade. She remembers all of it. "I never hit that girl." "You shoved her into a doorframe. She had a bruise on her jaw for 3 weeks. She was 5 years old." "That was an accident." "Everything was an accident with you. Your fist was an accident. The lamp was an accident. The time you dragged me across the floor by my hair. That was an accident too, wasn't it?" Wade took a step forward. 1 step. Ellie's hand moved to the table, to the bread knife. Her fingers closed around the handle. She didn't lift it, just held it. "You gonna cut me, Ellie?" "If you take another step toward my children, I'm gonna do a lot more than cut you." They stood there, 3 feet apart, the bread knife between them. Tommy screaming in the cradle. Ruth, silent behind her mother's back. "I want my son." "You don't have a son." "Boy's mine by blood." "Boy's mine by everything else. I carried him. I birthed him. I kept him alive when he stopped breathing in a cabin you left us to die in. You don't get to walk in here and claim him like he's a horse you forgot to tie up." Wade's hand shot out. He grabbed her wrist, the one holding the knife. His grip was iron, the same grip that had left bruises on her arms so many times she'd stopped counting. Let go of me. Put the knife down. Let go of me, Wade. You're my wife. These are my children. I got rights. You got nothing. The back door opened. Caleb walked in. He took one step into the kitchen and stopped. His eyes went from Wade's hand on Ellie's wrist, to the bread knife, to Ruth pressed flat against her mother's back, to Tommy screaming in the cradle. Take your hand off her. Wade turned his head, looked at Caleb, sized him up the way men do. This ain't your business, friend. You're in my house. That makes it my business. I'm here for my wife and children. That woman works for me. Those children live under my roof. And you've got your hand on her wrist hard enough to leave marks. I'm going to say it one more time. Take your hand off her. Wade's grip tightened. Ellie felt the bones in her wrist grind together. She didn't flinch, didn't make a sound. She'd had worse, so much worse. Wade, her voice was steady. There are 4 men outside that barn who have been watching you since you rode into this yard. Every one of them is armed. Every one of them will come through that door if I raise my voice. Let go of my wrist and walk out of this house and ride away. That's the only way this ends without somebody getting hurt. I ain't scared of some old ranch hands. You should be. They fought in wars you can't spell. They've buried better men than you, and they've spent 2 months watching me and my children heal from what you did to us. How do you think they feel about you right now? The back door was still open. Dutch stood just outside it, shotgun in his hands, not pointing it, just holding it, the way he'd held it the first day Ellie arrived, watching. Behind Dutch, Mose. Behind Mose, Abel. Cork was somewhere else, probably circling around to the front. That's what Cork would do. He talked too much, but he thought fast. Wade saw them. His jaw worked. The muscles in his neck tightened. He was calculating, the way he always calculated. Risk versus reward. Cost versus gain. You turned these people against me. You turned yourself, Wade. I didn't have to say a word. They took one look at my daughter's face, and they knew. Knew what? What kind of man leaves bruises on a 5-year-old? Wade released her wrist, shoved her backward. She hit the table edge with her hip. Pain shot through her side. She didn't drop the knife. Caleb moved, fast. Faster than Ellie had ever seen him move. He was between her and Wade in 2 steps, his hand flat on Wade's chest, pushing him back. Not hitting, not punching, just pushing. Steady, firm, immovable. That's enough. Get your hand off me. You just shoved a woman holding a bread knife with a baby 3 feet away. You're done here. She's my wife. She's a person, and she told you to leave. Wade looked past Caleb to Ellie. His eyes were wild now. The whiskey and the rage and the humiliation of being turned out of a room by strangers. She knew this look. This was the most dangerous version of Wade, the cornered version, the one that broke things because if he couldn't have them, nobody could. You think this is over? His voice was low, quiet. That quiet was worse than shouting. I'll go to the sheriff. I'll get a lawyer. I got rights over those children. The law's on my side. Then go to the sheriff, Ellie said. Go to every sheriff in Wyoming Territory. Tell them your wife ran away. Tell them why. Tell them about the black eyes and the split lips and the time you kicked me so hard I couldn't stand up for 2 days while I was carrying your son. Tell them all of it, Wade. See who the law sides with. Nobody'll believe you. Ruth will tell them. That stopped him. Ruth, 6 years old, witness to everything. The one person whose testimony would destroy him because children don't lie about the things that scare them, and every judge in every courthouse knew it. You'd put your own daughter on a witness stand?
I won't have to. One look at her face when she sees you, and everyone in that courtroom will know the truth.
Wade's eyes moved to Ruth. She was still behind Ellie, but she'd moved. She'd stepped to the side just enough that she could see him. And her face. God, her face. She was looking at her father with an expression that no 6-year-old should ever wear. Not hatred. Something worse. Recognition. She knew exactly what he was. She'd always known. She'd known before she had words for it.
Papa.
Ruth's voice was small but clear.
You should go now.
Wade flinched. The same flinch Caleb had made the day Ruth asked if he was mean. But different. Caleb had flinched from empathy. Wade flinched from truth. Ruthie, come here, baby.
No.
I'm your father.
I know.
Ruth's hand found Ellie's, held it.
You should still go.
The kitchen was silent, except for Tommy crying. Ellie wanted to pick him up, wanted to hold him against her chest and feel his heartbeat. But she couldn't move. Not yet. Not until Wade was gone. Caleb spoke. Mose, would you escort Mr. Redmond to his horse? Mose stepped through the back door. He was taller than Wade by 4 inches and wider by a foot. He didn't speak. Didn't have to. He just stood there and waited. Wade looked at Mose, looked at Dutch with the shotgun, looked at Caleb standing between him and Ellie, looked at Ruth holding her mother's hand with that terrible, knowing expression on her face.
This ain't over, Ellie.
Yeah, Wade, it is. He turned, walked out the back door. Mose followed him. Dutch followed Mose. Ellie heard boots on dirt, a horse snorting, the creak of leather, hoofbeats, fading. Then nothing. Ellie set down the bread knife. Her hand was cramped from gripping it. Red marks on her palm in the shape of the handle. She picked up Tommy. He was screaming, his face purple, his fists clenched. She held him against her chest, bounced him, whispered things that weren't words, just sounds. The sounds mothers make when they're telling their babies that the danger has passed. Ruth hadn't moved. She was still standing where she'd been. Her hand was still out, reaching for Ellie's, even though Ellie had stepped away.
Ruth? I'm okay, Mama.
You don't have to be okay. I know, but I am. She paused. I told him to go, and he went. You did. He never listened to me before. He listened today. Ruth looked at her hand, the one she'd been reaching out with. She closed it into a fist, opened it, closed it again. I wasn't scared, Mama. You don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending. I wasn't scared. I was mad. She looked up. Her eyes were dry, fierce. He hurt you. He hurt us. He left us to freeze, and then he came back and grabbed your arm like he owned you. I was so mad I couldn't even shake. Ellie knelt down, eye level. She looked at her daughter, 6 years old and burning with a fire that would either save her or consume her. Being mad is okay, Ruth. Is it? Yeah, baby. Being mad means you know you deserve better. That's important. Did you deserve better? We all did. Caleb was still standing in the kitchen. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken since Mose walked Wade out. His hands were at his sides, clenched, the knuckles white. Ellie? She stood, faced him. Tommy was quieting now, the screams fading to whimpers, his body going heavy against her chest. I'm sorry. Don't. He got in the house. That shouldn't have happened. It happened. It's done. It won't happen again. I know it won't. They looked at each other. His face was tight with something she recognized. Guilt. The same guilt she'd seen in his eyes when he talked about Caroline. The feeling that he should have been able to prevent something he couldn't have prevented.
Caleb, he came to get us. He didn't get us. That's the part that matters.
The part that matters is your daughter just told her father to leave, and he listened to her for the first time in her life. That ain't something to be sorry about. That's something to be proud of. His jaw worked. She shouldn't have had to. No, she shouldn't. But she did. And she was brave.
You know how she got brave? How? By watching people who treated her like she mattered. By living in a house where a man knocks before he opens a door. By sitting in a kitchen where nobody raises a hand or their voice. You did that, Caleb. You and Dutch and Mose and Cork and Abel. You showed her what men are supposed to look like. That's why she wasn't scared.
Caleb's hand came up, stopped. He'd been reaching toward her face, toward the spot where Wade had been standing. He stopped himself, pulled his hand back, put it in his pocket.
Can I do anything? You already did.
He nodded, left the kitchen. She heard the front door open and close. Then nothing. Ellie carried Tommy to the bedroom, laid him in the cradle. He was asleep now, worn out from crying. She covered him with the blanket, rocked the cradle twice, 3 times. Ruth appeared in the doorway.
Mama? Yeah, baby? Can I sleep with you tonight? You sleep with me every night. I mean, close. Real close.
Come here. Ruth climbed onto the bed, curled against Ellie's side. Her body was small and warm and trembling. Not from cold, from the aftermath. The shaking that comes after the danger passes, and your body finally lets you feel what you were too busy surviving to feel. You told me being scared means you keep moving. I did. What does being mad mean? Ellie stroked her daughter's hair. Brown, tangled. It needed washing. She'd do it tonight. Warm water from the stove, the good soap Dutch kept on the shelf. Being mad means you stopped accepting things that hurt you. Being mad means you know your own worth. Being mad means nobody gets to treat you like you're nothing, ever again. Ever? Ever. Ruth's breathing slowed. Her body stopped trembling. She pressed closer against Ellie.
Mama? Yeah? I don't want him to come back. He won't. How do you know? Because he saw something today he's never seen before.
What? People standing between him and what he thinks he owns. That scares men like your papa more than anything. A man who hurts people only does it when nobody's watching. When people watch and they stand up, he runs. That's what he did today. He ran. Ruth was quiet for a long time. Her fingers played with the edge of the quilt on the bed. The quilt Dutch had found in a trunk in the attic and brought down for Ellie's room. Blue and white. Not a wedding ring pattern, just simple squares. Honest squares.
Mama?
What, Ruth?
That man, Caleb, he stopped between you and Papa.
He did.
Papa was bigger.
Didn't matter.
Why not?
Because standing between someone and what's hurting them ain't about being bigger. It's about being willing.
Willing to what?
To take the hit, if it comes. Ruth thought about this for a long time. Ellie could feel her thinking, the gears turning in that 6-year-old mind that was too old and too sharp and too hurt for its age.
He's a good man,
Ruth said finally. Not a question, a statement, an assessment.
A verdict from the one person in this house who had the most reason to doubt and the most right to judge. Yeah, baby, I think he is. How long till we know for sure? Time will tell, Ruth. Time always tells. 419 steps, Ruth whispered. What? That's how far we walked in the snow. 419 steps. From the bad place to here. She yawned. That wasn't very far. It was far enough. Ruth closed her eyes. In 30 seconds, she was asleep. Ellie lay there. Tommy breathed in the cradle. Ruth breathed against her side. The house was quiet. The storm outside had picked up again, wind rattling the windows. But inside was warm. Inside was safe. She looked at her wrist. Red marks where Wade had gripped. They'd bruise by morning, purple by afternoon, yellow by next week, gone by the week after. They always went away. The marks always faded. But Ruth's face when she'd said, "You should go now," that wouldn't fade. That was permanent. That was her daughter, standing up for the first time in her life and finding out that her voice worked, that people listened, that she could say no and the world didn't end. That was worth every mile in the snow, every sleepless night, every bruise that had ever been left on her body. That was worth everything. Ellie closed her eyes. Her father's pocket knife was back in her bag now. Caleb had pulled it from the axle chain that first week and brought it to her, cleaned, oiled, the blade sharp. He'd held it out handle first, the way you hand a knife to someone you respect. She'd taken it, put it in her bag. Same spot it always lived. Her father's knife. 4-inch blade, bone handle, iron rivets. Made to last. Made to cut yourself free. She was free. Not because someone had rescued her. Not because a man had ridden in and saved her, but because she'd walked out of a cabin with 2 children and nothing else, and she'd kept walking until she found a place where the ground was solid enough to stand on. And now she was standing, and God help anyone who tried to push her off. Wade didn't come back. Not the next day, not the next week, not the next month. Ellie waited for him anyway. Not at the window, not on the porch. She waited the way women who've been hurt wait. With one ear always listening. With one hand always knowing where the knife was. With sleep that came lighter than before, and eyes that checked the road every morning before the coffee finished boiling. Caleb noticed. He didn't say anything, but the locks on the doors were new by Friday. Heavy iron bolts, the kind you couldn't kick through. Abel installed them without being asked. Dutch started keeping the shotgun by the front door instead of in the barn. Mose took to sleeping in the bunkhouse closest to the main house instead of the one by the corral. Nobody talked about it. They just did it. The way men protect when they've decided something matters. 3 months now. March. The snow was thinning. Not gone, not yet, but the drifts were shrinking, and the sun stayed longer each day, and the creek behind the north pasture was starting to run. Tommy was 3 months old. Fat. Loud. He laughed for the first time on a Tuesday, and it was Dutch who made him do it. The old man had been making biscuits, flour on his hands, and he'd sneezed so hard his whole body jerked. Tommy had stared at him, mouth open, and then laughed. A real laugh. Big and gummy and surprised, like he'd just discovered that the world was funny and nobody had told him. Dutch stood there with flour on his nose and a baby laughing at him, and something broke open in his face that Ellie had never seen before. He turned away fast, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, left a streak of flour across his cheek. "Allergies," he said.
It's March, Dutch.
Early allergies.
Ruth had started talking, not just to Ellie, not just to Dutch, but to everyone. Cork had taught her 3 card tricks, and she practiced them at the dinner table until Abel told her to stop dealing off the bottom of the deck. Mose was teaching her to braid rope. She made a halter for a barn cat. The cat wore it for 10 seconds before clawing it off and running under the porch. Cat don't appreciate craftsmanship, Mose told her. Cat's an idiot, Ruth said. Ruth, Ellie's voice from the kitchen. Sorry, Mama, Cat's not smart. Better. One evening, after the dishes were done and the men had gone to the bunkhouse, and Ruth was asleep, and Tommy was in his cradle with Dutch's warm stones, Ellie sat on the porch. The air was cold, but not cruel. The kind of cold that reminded you winter was leaving, but wasn't gone yet. Caleb came out, sat in the other chair. He had his pipe, but didn't light it, just held it, turned it in his hands the way he did when he was thinking. Something on your mind? Ellie asked. Always. Something specific. He set the pipe down on the arm of the chair. I rode to town yesterday, talked to Judge Brennan. Ellie's stomach tightened. About what? About Wade, about the law, about what rights he's got over you and the children. And? Brennan says abandonment's grounds. Wyoming Territory's got statutes. A man who leaves his wife and children without provision, that's desertion. You can file, get a legal separation, maybe a full divorce if Brennan's feeling progressive. Divorce? It's legal here, has been since '79. Ellie looked at her hands. They were clean tonight. She'd washed them after supper, scrubbed the flour out from under her nails. But the lines in her palms were stained dark. Ink from the ledgers, grease from the stove, the kind of marks that don't come off because they come from work, and work marks you permanent. What does it cost? I already paid it. You had no right to do that. I know. That's my fight, Caleb. My name, my marriage, my decision. I know that too. Then why? He picked up the pipe again, turned it. Because I watched a man grab your wrist in my kitchen, and I couldn't stop thinking about what he must have done when nobody was there to stop him. And I figured the least I could do was make sure the law knew he existed, and the law knew where you were, and the law was ready when you were ready. I didn't ask you to. No, you didn't. And if you're angry, I understand. But the paperwork's sitting in Brennan's office, your name on it, filed and waiting. All it needs is your signature. And if I don't sign? Then it sits there. Doesn't cost anything to sit. Ellie stared at the prairie. The last light was fading. The sky was that color between day and night. Not blue, not black, not anything with a name. Just the in-between. You keep doing things for me before I ask. That a problem? It's a pattern. Furniture before I proved myself. Wages before I asked. Now a divorce before I decided. You're right. I need you to stop. I can't. She looked at him. He was looking at her. That direct look. The one that didn't flinch, didn't dodge, didn't hide behind politeness. I can't stop, Ellie. Not because I don't respect you, because I do. I watch you work 18 hours a day. I watch you raise 2 children alone. I watch you fix everything in this house, the books, the stovepipe, the hinge on the barn door that Abel couldn't figure out. I watch you do all of it without asking for help, without complaining, without stopping. And I think, she shouldn't have to ask. She shouldn't have to fight for every single thing. Someone should just see what needs doing and do it. That's not how it works between people, Caleb. Then tell me how it works. You ask. You ask first. You say, Ellie, I want to do this thing. Is that all right with you? And then I say yes, or I say no, and you listen either way.
And if you say yes?
Then we do it together, not you doing it for me. Together. He nodded, slow, processing.
I'm not used to that.
Neither am I. Wade never asked me anything. He told me. There's a difference.
I'm not Wade.
I know you're not. That's why I'm telling you instead of packing my bag. The crickets were starting up. Early for March, but the warm spell had fooled them into thinking spring was here. Their sound filled the silence between words. Ellie.
Yeah?
Can I ask you something?
You just learned how. Go ahead.
Do you want the divorce? She breathed. In. Out. The cold air burned her lungs in a way that felt clean.
Yes.
Do you want me to go to town with you when you sign?
Yes.
Do you want to keep working here?
That depends.
On what?
On whether we're still talking about work.
The question hung in the air like pipe smoke. Neither of them moved. The cricket sang. The wind pushed through the grass. Somewhere in the barn, a horse kicked its stall. I got a ranch that needs running, Caleb said. I got books that need keeping. I got fences that need fixing and cattle that need tending, and a house that hasn't felt like a home in 4 years until you walk through the door with 2 children and nothing but a carpet bag. That ain't a question, Caleb. I'm getting to it. He set the pipe down, folded his hands. I don't want a housekeeper, Ellie. I don't want an employee. I've been watching you for 3 months, and I know what you are.
What am I?
A partner. The kind I never had. The kind Caroline and I both wanted to be for each other, but couldn't because we wanted different lives. He paused. I want the same life you want. I want this ranch. I want quiet mornings and hard work and somebody beside me who sees what needs doing and does it. Not for me. With me. Partnership. Legal. Equal. Your name on the deed next to mine. Half of everything. I've been here 3 months. I knew in 3 days. That's too fast. Maybe, but I watched you crawl under my wagon in a blizzard with a newborn on your chest and fix my axle with a pocket knife. A man sees something like that. He doesn't need 3 months to know. Ellie's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs. Pressed hard. The shaking slowed, but didn't stop. What about Ruth? What about her? She's part of this. If I stay, she stays. If she's not welcome, Ruth's been welcome since she asked me if I was mean, and I had to earn my answer. That girl's got more spine than most grown men I've met. She goes to school when the road's clear. She learns everything she wants to learn, and she grows up knowing that her home is her home, not borrowed, not charity, hers. And Tommy? Tommy gets the same. This is his home. He'll grow up here. He'll learn to ride and rope and read and do whatever he wants to do. And he'll grow up knowing that men are supposed to protect, not destroy. Ellie's throat closed. She swallowed. Swallowed again. Her eyes burned. She pressed the heels of her hands against them. Hard. The way she always did when something threatened to crack open the wall she'd built. Don't. Caleb's voice was quiet. Don't push it down. I don't know how else to. You do. You just haven't let yourself in a long time. The wall cracked. Not all at once. Just a fracture. A hairline split like the one in that axle 3 months ago. But enough. Enough for something to get through. She cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tears sliding down her face and dripping off her chin and landing on her hands in her lap. The hands that had fixed a wagon and kneaded bread and held a knife between her children and their father. Those hands, shaking and scarred and ink-stained, caught her tears. She cried for 2 minutes,
maybe 3. Then she stopped, wiped her face with her sleeve, breathed, looked at him. I want it in writing. I'll have Brennan draw it up. And I want Dutch to witness. Dutch and Mose both. And the divorce first. I sign those papers before I sign anything else. Of course. And Caleb. Yeah. If you ever raise your hand to me or my children, I won't. Let me finish. If you ever raise your hand, I will take my half of this ranch, I will take my children, and I will burn whatever's left to the ground, and I will not feel bad about it. I understand. Do you? I watched my wife die because I couldn't give her the life she needed. I spent 4 years alone because I was afraid to try again. I know what it costs to get this wrong. I won't get it wrong. She looked at him for a long time. His face in the dark, the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the scar on his jaw. A man who'd been broken too, just differently. A man who'd learned the same lesson she had, that you can't build something real on a lie, and you can't keep someone by holding them down. Okay. Okay? Okay. Partnership. Legal. Equal. My name next to yours. He held out his hand. She looked at it. Scarred knuckles. Calluses from rains. A cut on his thumb that was still healing from fence work. A working hand. An honest hand. She took it. They shook. Hard. Firm. The way people shake when they mean it. When it's not polite, it's binding. Partners, he said. Partners. They held the grip for 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then released. Ellie's palm tingled. She rubbed it against her thigh. Same as before. Same gesture. But different now. Everything different now. They went to town on Monday. Ellie signed the divorce papers first. Her handwriting was steady. Each letter formed careful. Ellie Redmond. The pen didn't shake. The ink didn't blot. Judge Brennan stamped it, recorded it, filed it in the leather-bound book. Then the partnership papers. Caleb had them drawn up already. She read every word, every clause. Equal partnership in Stone Ridge Ranch. Equal say. Equal share. If one partner died, the other inherited everything. If one wanted to leave, assets divided fair. Her name was there, printed in Caleb's handwriting. Eleanor Redmond, partner. She signed. He signed. Dutch signed as witness. Mose signed beside him. Brennan stamped it, filed it. Walking out of the courthouse, they passed Harriet Crenshaw on the boardwalk. Harriet saw them, started to speak, stopped, looked at Ellie, at Caleb, at the way they walked side by side, neither ahead nor behind. "Good morning, Mrs. Crenshaw," Ellie said, polite, clear, the voice of a woman who owned half a ranch and didn't owe anyone an explanation. Harriet nodded once, kept walking. They drove home in the wagon, the same wagon she'd fixed 3 months ago. Caleb had replaced the axle proper, new wood, iron-banded, built to last, but Ellie's chain was still there, coiled under the seat. He'd kept it. She didn't ask why. She knew. Ruth was waiting on the porch when they pulled into the yard. Tommy on her hip, held careful, head supported. Dutch beside her, pretending to whittle, but really watching the road. "Mama, you were gone a long time." "Had business in town." "What kind of business?" "The kind that means this is our home now, for real, for legal." Ruth looked at Caleb. He looked back. She studied him the way she studied everything, careful, thorough, missing nothing. "For how long?" "For as long as we want, Ruth." "What if we want forever?" "Then forever."
Ruth nodded, satisfied. She turned and carried Tommy inside. Over her shoulder, she said, "Dutch-made pie. It's almost cold." They ate pie, all of them, at the big table. Dutch and Mose and Cork and Abel and Caleb and Ellie and Ruth in her chair, with 2 books stacked on the seat so she could reach the table. Tommy in the cradle by the stove, asleep, his fists uncurled, his breathing deep and steady and strong. Cork told a story about a horse that stole his hat. Abel almost laughed. Mose dealt Ruth a hand of cards, and she beat him twice before he figured out she was counting. Dutch ate 3 pieces of his own pie and said it wasn't his best. Ellie sat at the table and looked at these people. These strangers who had become family. These men who had stood between her children and danger without being asked. This house that had been empty and quiet for 4 years and now had a baby laughing and a girl counting cards and pie crumbs on the floor. After supper, after dishes, after Ruth was asleep and Tommy was in his cradle with warm stones and the house was quiet, Ellie went to her room. She closed the door, sat on the bed. She opened her bag, pulled out her father's pocket knife. 4 inches, bone handle, iron rivets. She held it in her palm. The weight of it, the balance. Her father had made it to last. She opened the blade. The steel caught lamplight, sharp, clean. The edge he'd put on it 20 years ago, maintained by her hands ever since. Every woman should know how to cut herself free. She'd done it. She'd cut herself free from Wade, from the cabin, from the life that was killing her. She'd cut through the snow and the cold and the fear, and she'd come out on the other side, holding 2 children and nothing else. And she'd built something from nothing. She closed the knife, set it on the washstand beside her father's pocket watch. The brass case ticked, steady, reliable. The same rhythm it had kept for 20 years in his shop while he bent iron and fixed what was broken. She looked around the room, her room, the bed with the blue and white quilt, the cradle with Tommy sleeping, the wardrobe with 3 dresses now, gray, brown, and a new blue one she'd sewn from fabric she'd bought with her own wages. Her father's leather apron on the nail by the wardrobe, still crooked, still cracked, still smelling like smoke and iron, and the man who taught her that everything broken could be fixed if you had steady hands and the right tools. She touched the apron, ran her fingers along the cracked leather, the burn marks from forge sparks. "I did it, Papa," she whispered. "I found solid ground." She sat back on the bed. Tommy breathed. Ruth breathed in the room above, the room Caleb had given her last week, her own room, with a desk for schoolwork and a shelf for books and a window that faced east so the morning sun woke her. The house settled around them. Wind outside. Stove ticking through the wall. The sounds of home. Tomorrow she'd wake before dawn, build the fire, start the coffee. Caleb would come down. They'd work together in the kitchen. Ruth would crack eggs. Tommy would watch from the cradle. Dutch would bring biscuits. Mose would bring news from the barn. Cork would talk too much. Abel would say nothing. The routine, the rhythm, the life. Not the life she'd planned, not the life she'd been promised, but the life she'd built with her own 2 hands, from broken pieces and honest work and 419 steps through the snow. And it held. Every board and beam and brick of it. It held the way iron holds when it's been worked right, hammered and tempered and tested by fire. Not pretty, not perfect, but strong. Strong enough to last. Ellie Redmond lay down, pulled the quilt up, closed her eyes. Sleep came easy now, deep and warm and unafraid.
Outside, the last snow of winter was melting off the roof of Stone Ridge Ranch. Water ran down the eaves in thin streams, dripping into the dirt below, soaking into the ground where the frozen earth was finally, slowly, starting to thaw. And underneath that ground, deep in the dark where no one could see it, the iron that gave this land its name sat patient and unchanged and waiting. The way it always had, the way it always would, ready for someone with steady hands and good sense to find it and make something that would last. She'd found it. She'd made it last. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.